Hello. As I speak with you today, we are just before New Year's. And so, first of all, I want to wish you all a very, very happy New Year, a healthy New Year, a year full of blessing for you and for all of your family. As I look back on this past year, I can't help but recall where I was and what happened to us just a year ago on New Year's Day, 2024. I remember I was with my husband. We were visiting my mother, and we decided, New Year's is really not such a big deal here in Israel, but we decided we had some sandwiches for lunch, and we said, you know what? Let's raise a toast in honor of the new year. And just as we finished that, we got a phone call from my brother telling us that his son, my nephew, Amichai Oster, had just fallen in battle in Gaza. January 1st, he was the first soldier to fall in 2024. You can imagine, our whole world was turned upside down. And what happens to me is nothing compared to my mother, who lost her grandson, to my brother and sister-in-law, who lost their son. This, of course, colored our entire year. But I have to admit, we're not a unique family. There isn't a family in Israel that hasn't lost somebody, a family member, a friend of a friend, a neighbor. What we have gone through in this country since October 7th, 2023, is just incomparable to anything else that we have experienced in Israel. Now, I personally have gone through very difficult times in the past, particularly here in Judea and Samaria. We have had terror attacks. I remember in 2000, 2001, 2002, the Intifada, and some years before that, and additional years after that. But those were particularly intense years where literally every single day there was a terrorist attack. Going out on our roads was really scary. And that was a very, very difficult time. And I have to say that living through that time and raising children through that time probably added an extra layer of skin that I didn't have before. Really made us tougher. Who knows? Maybe that was God preparing us for this. But this is totally different. This was the massacre on October 7th. Unbelievable. The level of evil that we witnessed, the level of trauma, the level of fear. And yet at the same time, what we saw was an entire country mobilized at every level. I mean, people who are not in the army, volunteering, doing things. I have friends that to this very day are volunteering once a week and going to farmers and helping them pick their crops. Everywhere. People were there to help. But of course, our soldiers. Everybody between the ages of 18 and, even 50. People in their 50s were still going into reserves, being called to do whatever they needed to be do. Combat soldiers and everybody else in Gaza, in the north. And this has been a year, if I look back and see, no question, those families who lost loved ones, they are at the first circle, have suffered terribly. But there are circles, continuing concentric circles beyond that small, immediate family of someone who has fallen or someone who was seriously injured. We are a nation with PTSD, post-trauma. There's no question. Again, think of the children. Children, every child, and we saw this, by the way, in Judea and Samaria, I think, more than in any other part of the country, because the level, you know what Judea and Samaria is like. The level of commitment of the people who live here, the level of spiritual commitment, of Zionist commitment is just at the top. And so we had a far larger percentage of fallen and injured soldiers from Judea and Samaria than from any other part of the country. And so those concentric circles are there in a far more intense way. Here in my own community, for example, a couple of months ago, a young man fell in battle. He left 10 children and a wife, of course. Every one of those 10 children are in a different class in school. The children in each of those children's classes are affected by that terrible trauma that little girl or boy is experiencing because they lost their father. Imagine grandparents who have lost their grandchildren, parents who have lost their children, their friends and their neighbors. And every one of us, when I go to the store, when I bump into somebody in synagogue, my friends, everybody, for the last year and some months, ask each other, so how are you? What's up? What's new? And what that question really means is, who do you have now in the Army? And every single one of our friends has children and some grandchildren in the Army now since October 7th, in and out. I can tell you that my youngest son just finished his service in the North. Thank God. So right now, as I speak to you, we're all home, safe and sound. But I do know that in another couple months, already, 2 of my sons are going to start going back again. It's never ending. And if I look back at what we were focusing on in CFOIC this past year, first of all, amazing galvanizing of everybody. You were there for us in amazing ways. We needed to pick up the phone. We needed to send you an email, and immediately you responded. And our focus, as it needed to be during this time, was on security. The greatest fear in Judea and Samaria was that our communities would suffer the same fate as the communities just outside of Gaza. And you know why? Those of you who've been here, every single Jewish community has at least one, if not more, Arab towns or villages right next door. Maybe even a few hundred feet or a few hundred yards or a few hundred meters outside the last house. And so we were very frightened of that. And thank God, literally thank God, who has protected us. And thank you to the IDF who has been there in record numbers. Part of the reason our reserve soldiers are so busy because they've been here protecting us. And what we did, and what, thanks to your help at CFOIC, was to get the equipment that was needed, whether it was surveillance cameras, whether it was communications devices, whether it was all kinds of protective equipment that was needed to make sure these communities are safe. And I want to thank you. Medical equipment as well, emergency equipment of all kinds. Thank you, because you were there for us when we needed you most. But now as I look ahead to 2025, I believe we need to start changing our focus, because what we have pushed aside for a whole year and more are the needs of the ordinary people who have been living in this kind of catastrophe for over a year. People of all ages who are literally post-trauma. How do we strengthen the children? How do we strengthen the teenagers? Make sure that they're youth center, that they have a youth center, and that it is there for them. The seniors, we have to make sure that those who have lost their grandchildren, they have a place where they can seek comfort, where their friends can be with them. We need to make sure our senior centers are working and operating, and that every community that has a senior population has a senior center. We have to look after the families. You were very helpful to us with the Shabbat boxes, where we looked out for families where young men were serving and the young women and their children. We could give them a nice treat. We gave them a whole Shabbat meal in a box delivered to them on Friday. So that was just one weekend that they didn't have to cook. These were things that we did, and these are the kinds of things we will continue doing, but on a much grander scale. Because today, we have a responsibility to ensure that the people of Judea and Samaria, who have faced so much sorrow and so much tragedy, and who continue to live in fear of what may happen at any moment, we have to make sure we are strengthening those people, giving them what they need. We need to deal with a country, with a society, with a whole group of communities that will continue to live in the face of tragedy. Now, we're hoping that things will get better this year, but we are realistic, and we know that our soldiers are going to be mobilized on all fronts and in Judea and Samaria for months and maybe years to come. And so today the time has come to see what we can do to strengthen the people and to make sure that we are able to go forward, that we can shed or deal with some of this post-trauma and ensure that we are a strong society, that we continue to be able to move forward with strength, with determination, with faith, real faith, faith in the God of Israel, and an understanding that as we pray to him for assistance, for help, for redemption, we know that you are with us, praying with us, helping us in any way we can. And let us all join together in a very, very passionate prayer today that 2025 will be a better, easier year than 2024. Happy New Year to all of you.